I want you to watch this video because it might show the moment that changed Charlie Kirk's thinking about the October 7th attacks. On that day, over 1,300 Israelis were killed in their homes, at schools, kibbutzim, and a music festival. Hostages were taken, and it was one of the deadliest attacks in recent Israeli history. This first clip shows Charlie debating a woman who makes a very bold claim, one that clearly challenges his perspective. Watch this.
They let them in on purpose, yes.
If Israel laid down all of its weapons, what would happen?
They are committing a genocide and wait.
How dare you say, no, I gotta put, what is a genocide?
A genocide is when you are taking over a land and people senselessly just...
Was October 7th a genocide?
Okay.
Answer the question. When 1,300 Jews were killed in their homes, kibbutzes, and a music festival, was that a genocide?
No, because, no.
By your own definition, it is.
It was a terrorist act. But it was a terrorist act, but this was all planned by the governments. That's what I'm trying to explain to you.
No, you got to tell me, why was October 7th not a genocide, but what Israel is doing is a genocide?
Israel has the Iron Dome. Why? They could have easily protected the festival. They could have easily protected their people, but they let this Hamas, this little...
They let them in?
They let them in on purpose, yes.
Really?
Yes.
So you think the Israeli government allowed Hamas terrorists to come and kill 1,300 innocent civilians, take hostages, and go into kibbutzes?
They needed an excuse to do that to the Palestinians.
What is your evidence of this claim?
Why are they claim to want Hamas. They claim to want...
No, what is your evidence that Israel would butcher 1,300 of its own people? The worst Jews since the Holocaust. What is your evidence of that?
Look, I don't want to sound rude or offensive towards you, but I'm explaining throughout the news why is, again, they have the Iron Dome. They have they have billions of dollars in defense. They have millions of dollars in military, and they have the power to stop. They allowed the Hamas group to go in.
There is no evidence to your claim.
As you just heard, Charlie's initial reaction was strong. He clearly opposed what the woman was saying. He insisted on evidence, he questioned the claim, and he was not convinced. At this point, he's defending his position, standing firm. But even here, you can see something subtle happening. The conversation planted a seed. It made him start asking questions he hadn't seriously considered before. And that's where the second clip comes in. After this encounter, Charlie begins to think differently. He doesn't immediately change his stance, but you can hear him raising questions that are much more critical, questions that suggest he's open to new possibilities. Watch this.
How did these guys not know this was taking place?
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here. But I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand-down order? Was there a stand-down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. Wow. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. The whole country is. Yeah. And you're trying to tell me that they're going to concerts and kibbutzes and schools and by reports 6 hours. Let's say it's 3 hours.
That's suspect. Go ahead, Rob.
It's also not like a right-wing reporting. This is from the New York Times. The long wait for help as massacre unfolds in Israel. I can't think of a more liberal news outlet than the New York Times.
And by the way, I'm actually very pro-Israel. So let me be very, so I'm not exactly.
Well, I think we all are.
No, I just want to make sure my position is clear here. But so Patrick, there are other explanations. It's possible that the Netanyahu government was double-crossed by bad agents. Okay? That's dark, but it's not as dark as what we're talking about. Okay? Another aspect is that Netanyahu might have traitors in his government, like legitimate traitors that have infiltrated. I was texting with some senior people in the IDF, and they said, Charlie, can't say too much, but let's just say the same problem you have with the left in America, we have here in Israel. So there's something to think about. Just something to think about, right? Is that maybe there are some people within those intel agencies that aren't as sympathetic. Or maybe, Patrick, maybe they might have gotten a tip, they might have gotten whispers, but no one thought it would be 1,200 Jews dead. That's a potential, right? Because here's the essence of it. The essence is this. This is the closest thing to the Holocaust that any of us have lived through. But the fact is now Bibi and the Israeli hard-right government has a mandate. I got to be careful the way I say this. They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. Yep. I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? And honestly, they have a mandate to go seek justice and revenge. They do. This idea that they need to have a truce or a peace treaty, that's morally crap after you see women and children be burned alive and dragged to the streets. But there are some serious questions here, Patrick. And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right.
What's fascinating about this moment is how the first interview pushed Charlie to think. Even though he disagreed with the woman, he didn't dismiss her outright. He listened, he reflected, and he questioned. That's one thing that really stood out about him. He never took something as absolute truth. He observed, he investigated, and he was willing to change his position if the facts led him there. You can see it clearly in these clips. At first, he firmly stood by his views, but after some time and critical thinking, he began asking serious questions about what happened on October 7th, including how such a devastating attack could occur despite Israel's heavy defenses. He didn't claim it was an inside job outright, but he was willing to consider the possibility and investigate further. This willingness to question, even when it challenged his own beliefs, is rare. Charlie's approach showed a dedication to facts over assumptions, even in a situation as high stakes as the October 7th attacks. It's a key part of why many people respected him, and also, sadly, why his pursuit of truth may have contributed to the threats he faced and ultimately his assassination.
He did not like Bibi Netanyahu, and he said that to me many times, and he said it to people around him many times. He felt that Bibi Netanyahu was a very destructive force. He was appalled by what was happening in Gaza. He was, above all, resentful that he believed Netanyahu was using the United States to prosecute his wars for the benefit of his country, and that it was shameful and embarrassing and bad for the United States, and he resented it. Didn't hate Netanyahu. He wasn't out there with a placard saying that, but he certainly expressed that to me and a lot of other people.